So I've given you a outline of a physical science year 10 unit. I have taught this unit in the past, but you'll notice that the unit is quite light on in terms of the activities and the lesson structure. I've not included all the tasks within the lesson, but the main ideas and concepts that we would cover. And obviously I would supplement these with activities, the ones listed with other activities, including, a focus on literacy, things like that. So when you're starting out, obviously I would recommend that you have more detail within your lesson plans than I've provided here, okay? So this is just an overview for you. It's always better to be over-prepared than under-prepared, believe me. So I know you're all wondering why I've chosen a physical science unit for you. And I know you're going to hate me for it, but this has been done on purpose. I would know, I'm taking a little bit of a punt here, but I reckon you're not physics specialists. Only because physics teachers, there's not many out there. There's not many qualified physics teachers out there, and they're highly sought after. So we are probably most likely on the same level in terms of our understanding of the content here. Also, physics is one of those sciences that can be taught very dry and boring. So I thought it might be nice to consider how you can envisage turning this into a really engaging subject. You can see the connections to the curriculum here that I've put, and obviously the incorporation of the science inquiry skills, not to be confused with the inquiry-based model. Okay, so these are skills that you need to think about how you're going to incorporate them into your lesson and activities. And the lesson foci are briefly listed here, but obviously when I'm in a classroom, I would clearly write the learning intentions and success criteria on the board for the students. And I generally get them to rank themselves out of 4 in terms of what they know about the learning intention. And we revisit this at the end of the lesson, and they give themselves another rank. And this is done, individually for them to really think about what they've got out of the lesson. It also gives me a little bit of information. I use it as formative assessment in terms of, each individual student, have they actually understood what, we've covered in the lesson, or have they not? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they rank themselves the same as what they did at the beginning, and sometimes they even go backwards. But ideally we want, a progression of learning within the lesson. So this unit is based on this TAC project that I've dubbed the TAC project. We've got a little bit of a synopsis. So I have a bit of a engaging car crash video. It's a bit of a TAC, a car crash of a inexperienced P driver. It's not graphic or anything, but it is, it can be emotional for the students. So you've just got to be really careful about whether you actually do show, something like a car crash video in your class. Thinking about each individual student and kind of knowing where they've come from, you need to make that call. But to engage them, I have done that in the past. And then basically said, well, these students are going to be the drivers of tomorrow. So you need to design a safe car that you'd like to drive. And in doing so, we hope to ensure all car manufacturers include these safety features, as well as making you informed on why these safety features should be included. And the basis of your knowledge on physics behind each feature should help you understand the dangerous nature of the car, and by making you aware, reduce the number of car crashes in your age group. So I've kind of set the scene here in terms of why I'm setting, the project. And clearly there's differentiation in this task as they get to design their own features, but they're also connecting it to their own life as well. And, we're doing a little bit of a grabbing interest and understanding prior knowledge here. And here I've mentioned a diary of knowledge, which is just a technique of recording their understandings and reflections on what they've learned in the lesson. And we do this every class in this unit. So I wanted to also set the context of the importance of understanding physics and forces. Because they're going to be the new drivers on the road. Some of them, have their learner's license or about to get them. So obviously trying to connect the overall unit to authenticity for that, for a 15, 16-year-old. I suppose the important takeaways for this unit is that we've tried to include some kind of experiment in each lesson, and the experiments are varied. Some are connected to computer sessions. Some they get to, make their own car and test different speeds. Some they design their own experiments. There's a data analysis one and so on. So there's varied experiments and obviously varied skills within that. And these tasks are clear formative assessment for me. And generally I choose the student groups. My students are used to me choosing their groups. They expect that when they walk into the room. I put their name on the bench and I mix it up all the time. So I do this intentionally to change the focus of the groups and to sometimes set different tasks or different discussion questions for each group, depending on levels. And sometimes I use it because I don't want two students working together. But the students generally think that it's completely random because the way that I put it out on the seats, I'm just like, I'm just throwing them like, yep, you can go there, yep. But really I've put their names in order before I've come to class. Okay, so they're used to it. I don't get much pushback because they're used to that in my teaching. So the summative assessment is the obviously the TAC project, but it's also the formative assessment in terms of, the diary of knowledge, to let me know what they're learning and when. And this contributes to the final product as well. So I think the challenge for physics is to engage your female students. We want more female engineers and physicists. So thinking about how you can incorporate a focus for them is really important. The school I taught this unit in had a group of girls that were really interested in soccer. So I was able to change some of the tasks, especially the experiments. This one here, measuring speed using a ticker timer. We were able to go outside and test the speed of kicking a soccer ball and things like that, the motion of a soccer ball. So we would go outside, would measure the speed, the acceleration, ball on inclines and things like that. So just thinking of ways to bring a focus on the girls in your class is really important from a STEM perspective and a gender bias perspective. So that's food for thought as well. So going to the task at hand, we have DO4's 4 questions. These are 4 high impact questions that help us focus our planning to improve student outcomes. So if we focus our planning in terms of the curriculum, the assessment and the differentiation, and obviously the inclusion, we might respond to these formally, or we consider them informally when writing a unit. But often we actually, write a response to these. Okay, so let's think about what we'd write in terms of the motion topic, in terms of what we want our students to learn. So clearly it's the curriculum. Okay, so going back to our unit plan, it is these. So we would copy and paste all of these, and it is the 2 strands, the science understanding strand. So we've got the physical science ones in there, And we've got the science inquiry skills as well. So that would go here, okay? Also thinking about which literacy skills, which numeracy skills do we want our students to learn? Which critical and creative thinking skills do you wish your students to learn? Okay. Thinking about the varied ways that we can represent ideas and justify our thinking. You know, what are the different ways that we can represent data, for an example? What are the different ways to identify and represent, you know, the outcomes of an experiment, for an example? Thinking about, you know, the metacognition capability as well. What is it that we would like to connect here? The personal and social capabilities. But also I like to think about, you know, personal strengths in terms of assisting these learners in preparation, you know, for even VCE or the workforce. You know, how do you use feedback, for an example? How do you prioritize your area that you need to improve on? How do you first identify that, but how then do you build upon that? So are there anything that you want your students to learn? You know, I mean, in that TAC project, one of my main aims was just to bring them, bring a focus to the importance of road safety and things like that. So that I might put that in number 1. So number 2, obviously, by getting to know our students, we can, you know, we can know that they're learning. And obviously we can't do this in this situation because you don't know your students, but this is all about building rapport, showing interest, you know, noting absences when they're away and why they've been absent, if you know that, responding to changes in behaviour and demeanour. That all tells us a lot about whether students are learning. You know, the physical, the way they're sitting in their seat, the way they're answering questions, things like that. But obviously in this unit plan, we need to think about, well, what is the diagnostic assessment? You know, what is the formative assessment? Where are they all starting from? And then how are they actually making connections to what they've learned, you know, in terms of the metacognition? Where is the use of the meta language, you know, and how are they demonstrating to you that they understand, you know, meta language? You know, for an example, they might be drawing visual representations of, you know, that meta language for you, or connecting it to their own lives or the real world. Group work, collaborative work, you know, how are they participating in the group together? So have you got tasks that are collaborative and allow them to do that? And, you know, have you got reflecting time of their own learning? Differentiation, so we've got 2 aspects here. So enriching and extending, so, you know, giving some kind of choice potentially, extension activities, what does that look like? What does the more challenging materials look like, or giving an entry point to all, you know, for both of them, giving an entry point for all learners, but then able to extend, you know, the ones that are more proficient. Thinking about the synthesis type questions here. And this one is, well, you know, what happens if the students don't learn? Are you providing multiple opportunities to engage with the content? You know, what does that actually look like? From the vast, you know, type of experiments to the way that they interact with the information, you know. There's a task in there that goes through and uses media articles, for an example, you know, just, you know, where appropriate, having that kind of mixed task and, as I said before, the collaboration. You could have mixed ability groups or strength groups, depending on the appropriateness of the task. And things like that. So here, obviously, we don't have a knowledge of our students, but this is the startings of thinking about what do we need to supply in our planning for the potential students to come.